Those that knew what was coming had prepared for decades. The rest of us had ignored it for decades. When the Galactic Federation finally arrived, Space Command and the human race just weren't ready. 2020 had just been the beginning. A test. A test we failed.
Mr. Roberts?
Alas, poor Doug. Have another drink.
You should check in on him, sir.
What's that?
Chris.
Oh,
You should check in on
don't worry
Chris.
about that. Don't worry about him.
Mr. Roberts.
All right. Fine. Get him on the line.
Hey, Chris.
Ho, 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 Michael Lloyd Roberts.
Everything okay?
Oh, yes.
It's just that I understand the aliens are prowling again, the Galactic Federation and all that, so just want...
Line went dead. I don't like it, Doug. Let's go. Scan the perimeter.
Scanning now, sir. All clear. Mr. Roberts, the Galactic Federation just landed, sir. Surrounded, sir. Multiple life forms approaching the door.
Preserve the body. Insert the device.
Eye drums. Are we ready, Doug? All right. Christmas, here we come. Doug?
Mr. Roberts, your 2-second warning.
On time for once. Hello, magnificent eye drums. It's Friday, 18th of December, and we do warmly welcome you to this, the final late-night Noisecast of 2020. Once again doing what we can and what we must to ensure feasts of reason, flows of soul, and stolen moments of fierce festivity in the time of technically-tiered lockdowns. On the show tonight, we're celebrating members of our Super Circle, Mr. Freddie Benedict and the Sam Every Big Band, Elisa and Jo Caleb. Alex Rafael is here, 12th Pier's very own Alex Rafael, and we are honoured to be joined by the granddaughter of the acting legend, Mr. Burgess Meredith, Annie May Pilon. You will of course notice the luscious cello arrangement that is playing beneath my various Noisecast ramblings thus far. That arrangement belongs to the unmistakable Mr. Ricardo Pez. Ricardo, of course, involved me in his Andro Tutto Bene festival at the start of the very first lockdown, and indeed inspired many of us to take to the airwaves as much and as often as possible, providing us with performance platforms and celebrating all of the music that was no longer able to be performed publicly, but nonetheless could be celebrated by all virtually. So, my tremendous thanks to him as ever. I'm delighted to say that Ricardo will be playing us out at the end of the show, so something very much to look forward to there. I turn now then, in something of a stylistic departure for the Late Night Noisecast, to our first featured track of the evening, the Sam Every Big Band, their new original from their Christmas EP, Christmas is Coming, featuring the supreme vocalist, Mr. Freddie Benedict. I suggest that this is a departure from form as a result of the fact that this track does not have an accompanying music video. So rest those eye drums for a moment, re-engage the eardrums to their fullest possible capacity, and dig Christmas is Coming.
Christmas is coming, the snowflakes will be falling. It's the most wonderful time of year. So hang up your stockings, put the tinsel on the tree, because Christmas is coming, my dear. It's the only time of year the reindeer fly. You can see them on their sleigh ride across the sky. Gather all your family round, or go out and paint the town. It's the only time of year the whole wide world turns upside down. So baby, light a fire, and we'll toast the night away, because Christmas is coming our way. Reindeer fly. You can't see them on their sleigh ride across the sky. Gather all your friends around, or go out and paint the town. It's the only time of year the whole wide world turns upside down. So baby, light a fire, and we'll toast the night away, because Christmas is coming. Christmas is coming. Christmas is coming our way.
The Sam Every Big Band there with Christmas is Coming, Mr. Freddie Benedict on vocals. Those of you who have enjoyed the Late Night Noisecast for the duration will of course have heard me celebrate the life of the late, great Jay Benedict, Freddie's father. As a result of teaching Freddie over some years, I had the great privilege of getting to know all of Freddie's family, and Jay holds a particularly special place in my heart. An incredible gentleman who had the capacity to make anyone he encountered feel like the most important person in the room, even if that room was full of superlative luminaries. Very much a cliche on my part, and very much true on the part of Jay. The pride felt in all that Freddie has achieved is truly overwhelming. It's a great honour to feature him on tonight's show, and I look forward to all of the wonderful noises he has to make in the many, many years to come. Moving swiftly now then to our first interview guest of the evening, and this guest will be no stranger to those of you who have engaged with 12th Peer Productions' social media accounts throughout the autumn. I speak, of course, of the wonderful Alex Rafael, 12th Peer's media manager, and I'm delighted to say that she joins us here on the Noisecast now. Alex Rafael, as I live and breathe, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, Michael. But I'm just wondering what on earth is going on in the background in the bunker today.
Well, I am famous for my tacky approach to all holiday-based celebrations, an intentional little affectation on my part. So this is the most random it was possible to present my new set of LED lights around pre-existing artifacts.
It looks a little bit like you're about to host a festive discotheque.
Well, I assumed that was what the Noisecast was about at this particular time of year. I see that you've been advertising 12th Peer's adventures of late, and that seemed to be the thing that I was bringing to the table, as it were. See, now we're in some sort of festive icy number. I see your baubles there. Tell me about your particular festive setup.
My baubles. Well, I've gone for a very minimalist white twig tree, complete with gold, turquoise, green and pink baubles. I didn't quite know what your setup was going to be, so I thought I'd just cover all bases in case.
Well, rich in its resplendence, nonetheless. You obviously joined us for this second season of 12th Peer Adventures. You and I had worked together before. I wondered if you'd like to introduce yourself to the audience. Obviously, many of them have engaged with you already through social media. You've been a tremendous support to me through some ridiculous months of late, and so I thought this would be a wonderful opportunity to say hello to all those you've been interacting with.
Yeah, so I joined, where are we now? It must be about 3 months ago that we launched the new season of 12th Peer's work. So I joined as the media manager. I was delighted to get involved with it, having listened to some of the audio podcasts that you'd released previously. So yes, it's been great fun actually, setting up the Twitter and Instagram accounts and getting to know the Super Circle for a start, working out who everybody is, and then meeting some fantastic people from all over the world actually. So we have quite a number of followers, probably a little bit related to doing the American Chronicle over in the States. So there are quite a few interactions that have been had over there, and some great music that I've been hearing from some of the great singers and songwriters over in the US. And then yeah, just some very amusing interactions that I've been coming across. Normally because some of your Super Circle members haven't or didn't initially realise that you were not doing the social media at that time.
Name names.
I think one of the first encounters I had was with Alex Monk from the Flying Machines, who sent a message asking how his hombre was. He needed a catch-up. So I felt
it's important for hombres to catch up. It honours me to ask
you, Alex, in this moment. What's happening in your glass?
Well, I thought I'd go for a festive classic. It's more of a Christmas Day morning drink, actually. I've gone with Bucks Fizz.
That might be when the show goes out, based at the rate I'm currently finishing production. I too join you on a Bucks Fizz, but I understand that you've made your own. Do tell us.
Yes, I went for my own concoction rather than the ready bought stuff. So I've just worked on the basis of creating an orange top. I think it's mostly Prosecco, with just a little hint of orange for flavour at the top.
To a fiercely festive hint of orange. Yes.
Fiercely festive hint of orange. Cheers.
Yes. You mentioned some of those humorous interactions there. Any sense of highlights from the first, where are we now? 4 or 5 shows of the season?
Oh, well, I think the opening show of the season was a great introduction for me. Really very different from the audio recordings. Just seeing things brought to life in the bunker was fantastic. And of course the special guest who I've been interacting with a little bit on Instagram and Twitter, Mr. James Titchell of Sound Generation, and discovering his pure love for Jean-Claude Van Damme. I think that's a highlight. It has to be.
I hear there's a samurai chess game on the cards, which, given the popularity of the recent Queen's Gambit on Netflix and otherwise, is rather enticing.
Yes, I might have signed you up for a chess tournament, Michael. I hope you're ready. So it could be on screen, it could be, with you having your tequila Diablo cocktails, whatever's appropriate for a chess match. I don't know. And yes, apparently Mr. Titchell has a samurai chess set, which sounds quite advanced. So we need to work on game tactics.
Absolutely. Well, it's only his own cowardice that, and/or not knowing that we were going to talk about him this evening, that didn't bring him to the show tonight. Otherwise, we would have had a live, a live battle royale, as it were, on the airwaves tonight. Any particular musicians and musical interactions that you've been drawn to in these last few episodes? Yeah.
Okay. So I loved hearing Izzy Yardley's performance. I didn't realise I like folk music quite as much as I do. So
that reminds me of the famous Louis Armstrong quote, which is that all music is folk music. I ain't never heard no horse sing a song.
Yes, exactly. So I enjoyed her. It was a recording of her live performance, wasn't it, from Union Chapel, with Nick Peeney, who you'd had on the previous week, I think, at that time. Yeah, I thought that was a really special music video to watch. I loved that. But across the series, there have been so many great ones. I think I've really enjoyed the variety that has been brought to the Late Night Noisecast in terms of the musical guests. So Nadine Benjamin, for me, especially given my background as a singer and a supposed soprano, hearing her beautiful rendition of Ave Maria was splendid. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to make a stand against the term supposed soprano there in your case. But one of the first things that drew me to ask you to join 12th PL was not only your musicality but also your unique rhetorical style, which has been enjoyed by many of our supporters throughout the interactions on social media of late. Tell us a bit more about yourself in that mix, please.
Okay. Yes, I've had quite a varied career. So I started off training as a journalist originally. I went to university in Sheffield and trained to to work in journalism, and I loved features writing, which is probably where my love of the long form copywriting comes from. However, I found myself sidelined a little by then doing a psychology course. So I worked in mental health for quite a number of years, which then led me to work doing activities for older adults, running projects for charities based around reminiscence work for people with memory loss and dementia. At the same time, I was then asked to set up a choir because the head of this organisation knew that I did singing as more of a hobby then. So I was doing a lot of musical theatre shows, and I got chucked in at the deep end, asked to run a local ladies' choir, set that up, and from that moment, I sort of launched into working with choirs and working in schools, going and running projects alongside the curriculum, school productions, various local choir projects. So yeah, I took a detour, but I'm really glad that I did, because I have a real passion for music and singing, and the joy that singing can bring to people, the uplifting power of music.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. Thank you so much for coming on board with 12th Pier, and for all that you've done through these unreasonably ridiculous times. I wish to return to the Bucks Fizz, as it were, to raise a glass to you in gratitude, and here's to the pride of our future days, Alex Rafael.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let your heart be light. From now on, our troubles will be out of sight. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Make the Yuletide gay. From now on, our troubles will be miles away. Here we are as in olden days, happy golden days of yore. Faithful friends who are dear to us, gather near to us once more. Through the years, we all will be together, if the fates allow. Hang your shining star upon the highest bough, and have yourself a merry little Christmas now.
Elisa Caleb, Jo Caleb, and myself there, with an arrangement of Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, recorded some years, and in my case, several pounds ago. Recorded, of course, for the good people at Sound Generation. Those of you who watched the first episode of this new on-screen series of the Late Night Noisecast would, of course, been introduced to the great James Titchell. He and Sophia Wilde run that agency and very kindly lent me use of the video for this evening's festive
edition.
Rounding out our fiercely festive features of this particular Noisecast then, I am honoured to say we are now joined by the granddaughter of the legendary actor Mr. Burgess Meredith. Mickey in the Rocky franchise, the Penguin in the original Batman TV series, and many, many more. It is my great privilege then to welcome to the Late Night Noisecast, Annie May Pilon.
So I spent from 1991 to 1996 every summer with him exclusively. He was my sole caretaker from May to September. And so in that respect, you know, I say grandfather, but to me, he was so much more than that, really. He gave me unconditional love, which I previously had never known. And so we, you know, our summers spent together were by far the happiest memories of my childhood. And so I hold him very near and dear.
I first came across your work through the Burgess Meredith Legacy account on social media, and the immediate thing that jumped out to me there was the sense of warmth, the sense of character that he brought to you as his granddaughter,
Yes.
and also that the playful element of his incorporation of the qualities of certain of his characters, such as the Penguin and certain Rocky stories. Tell us about the way in which he imbued his relationship with you, with the characters that he played, please.
Well, he always said that whatever character he was playing was very much colored by what he was going through at the time. So he had a very tough life during the making of Rocky II, which actually in a way worked in his favor, because there are a lot of intense scenes there, and so there's a lot of raw emotion. And I think that's what people really see when they see his characters, is they feel that real emotion, because that was there. He could always, you know, link whatever was going on in his life into the character and kind of dived into the character in that sense. So it always came across as genuine. As far as how his film and his work affected, say, our relationship, is we watched a lot of his films. At my request, I was always interested in what films my grandpa Buzzy was in. And so I've told the story of how we would go to the library once a week, and I'd look at the VHS section, and I'd go through each VHS. Were you in this one, Grandpa Buzzy? Or were you in this one? And he'd say, no, I wasn't. And we just go through. And in the off chance that there was a film that was his, and it was child appropriate, we would usually watch it that evening. And it was just kind of like a lovely little tradition that we had.
Absolutely. It sounds wonderful. You mentioned Grandpa Buzzy there. Could you tell us the origin of that name, please?
Yeah. So his name was Burgess, and Buzz was his nickname that his friends called him. It was kind of like a conjunction of Burgess, but I always knew him as Grandpa Buzzy, kind of a play on his nickname.
Right, I see. Grandpa Buzzy. Love it. And what kind of films were you picking out when you were fortunate enough to find the ones you were after in the VHS store?
Rocky II, he had in his own personal collection. That was our favorite. We wore that VHS out from watching the chicken chasing scene a million times. That was our favorite scene. So definitely Rocky II was a staple in his household in the summer. Second Chorus, which is a musical he did with Fred Astaire and Paulette Goddard. That was a favorite of ours. I'm trying to think. Puff the Magic Dragon, which a lot of people don't know that he voiced Puff. Which is kind of an interesting thing. We watch that quite often.
What would he choose for you? What did it feel like he was keen to share with you?
You know, he wasn't actually big on television. It was kind of, or film, watching film. He always was working on some arts and crafts project at home. But it was, for him, it was more of, he had us, you know, again, arts and crafts projects, like making flutes out of straws and doing things like that. But when he was able to choose, usually it was, he quite often went for, I don't know if you've seen the play Waiting for Godot,
Yes.
where he's with Zero Mostel, the televised play. He liked that one, and I knew he liked that one. I knew that was one of his favorites, so I purposely chose that often just because I knew it was his favorite. But it was pretty much whatever film we wanted to watch of his, or I mean of any films that he had. He watched a lot of kids movies with us, though, I have to say. A lot of Disney movies. They weren't all his, but yeah.
Wonderful. Much of your answer there leads me naturally to my next question. The extent to which he was musical. I obviously know the John Williams Boston Pops moment in the 80s.
Did you watch it?
Absolutely, yes.
You actually watched it. I feel like no one did. I posted that. I'm like, please, someone watch. Actually, sit and watch this.
I actually knew of it before, so I was delighted when and it sort of combined at perfect timing when I saw you post it. That was that kind of tipped the interest, as it were.
Glad.
So, yeah. Yes. Huge John Williams fan, and always remember that as such. Also, when I see him miming playing the piano in various Hollywood moments, then I'm very impressed with the accuracy therein. Again, something else that I that I play a large part in myself these days. So yes, to what extent was he musical?
Well, he had a rough childhood. And so he had auditioned for a boys choir in New York City. He grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, but they held, I think it was auditions just around the nation, and he auditioned and he got in as a boy soprano in a boys choir in New York. So that was kind of his ticket out of his, dark, bleak childhood. So that certainly was the beginning of it. And he played piano a little bit, not maybe as well as, his characters that he, needed to. But he, that he recorded albums.
Yes, please tell us.
How the West Was Won album, and Songs and Stories of the Gold Mine, I believe is what it's called, and which I'm actually, fingers crossed, I'm in process of getting those turned into MP3s, because I'm just afraid that, I don't know, we're going to lose access to them. So I'm going to properly do that. That's my next project, actually. No, so he recorded albums. I think he felt that his voice when he got older wasn't, he felt it crackled a lot as far as when he sang, that he tensed up too much to be a good singer. But I think those are wonderful albums. I know they sold very well. What other musical things? So we played piano. He recorded those 2 albums, and he just loved music. He, was big on jazz, on Dave Brubeck and Miles Davis. There was always jazz playing in his home. There was always film scores playing in his home, which I find really interesting. The Apollo 13 film score was always, I remember that one for whatever reason, it was always playing. He had a deep appreciation for music, for sure. And he was, I would say, an artist himself, even though I don't think he would say that.
Right. I'm a jazz musician by training.
Really?
Jazz singer and pianist. So I saw you say that he instilled a love of jazz in you. Tell us about that sort of that shared passion in that way.
Well, it started really for his brother was a jazz musician. His brother actually played with Paul Whiteman. And if you've seen the movie King of Jazz from 1930, his brother is the drummer. He drummed for Paul Whiteman. So I think it kind of started with that. He worked with Artie Shaw in second chorus. And actually his musical Thurber Carnival, which had a jazz score, was the first of its kind. That was a play on Broadway he did based on the writings of his friend James Thurber. Incorporated jazz, which was the first of its kind to actually have a Broadway play with jazz music, and all the musicians were actually on stage, which was another first of its kind. He originated that, actually, and he just loved jazz. Being with him during the summers was such a dream. It was with someone who I knew loved me very much, and I loved him very much. It was by his home. It was in his home by the ocean, and it was jazz playing. So it was just kind of, it's like, I feel like jazz at this point is in my blood, because it just, the best memories of my childhood were with a jazz soundtrack playing in the background, really.
That's wonderful. And I understand you play piano yourself.
I do. I've just recently started because of the pandemic. There really isn't much else to do. So I used to play, and then I quit for many years, and I literally bought a keyboard in July. And so I've been kind of getting back into it. And it's been honestly one of the greatest things ever. It's like the one silver lining of this is that I'm back playing piano again.
Obviously, I'm keen to touch upon Twilight Zone and Batman and those elements. Whichever one you'd like to begin with in that mix, and your experience of his thoughts on those roles, please. So.
Yeah, Twilight Zone is his best work, honestly. On what it's like the roles he got on Twilight Zone, the roles that Rod Serling wanted him to have. It's his best work on screen, I think. Honestly. I'm trying to think. So it was Time Enough at Last was a first season. And then it was Obsolete Man, second season. And then Mr. Dingle was also second season. And then his fourth episode was Printer's Devil. Right, have you seen all of them?
Yes. I was reminded of the Time Enough at Last and Don Rickles being in Mr. Dingle the Strong, which I was sort of surprised to be reminded of. But I was thinking actually recently just how the rather sort of a parable comparative in the first two you mentioned there with where we're presently at. Certainly Time Enough.
Yeah, right. There was a lot of comparisons between the pandemic and Henry Bemis and like Abyss. Yeah.
Those the Rod Serling lines written around around his characters are just wonderful. And unsuccessful in all he did, but a good listener with a strong jaw,
with a prominent jaw.
Prominent jaw, yes.
Yeah. Yep. They were best friends. They were very close.
Right.
You can tell that they had great respect for each other. And which one was your favorite? Your favorite Twilight? Is it Time Enough at Last?
Probably Time Enough at Last, but for the sense of a smile, a lasting smile, then Dingle in terms of it being Rickles, and in terms of those lines and the sort of the subtle comedy of it and the way that Burgess plays it. Always makes me smile. But Time Enough for the sort of the grander principle. But yeah.
Right. I think Burgess' favorite. I think he loved Time Enough at Last. I think he loved the set. They filmed it on MGM. At the time, they were doing another disaster movie, which I would actually like to know what movie they were filming at MGM that had that same set. But it was perfect timing that it worked out that they could film it there.
How about in terms of Batman? I always find him hard to read. Obviously, he was. Am I correct in thinking that he was against interviews largely, or a sense of being overexposed in that sense on interview, or not?
That's a good question. He popped up. You have to understand that he popped up on television all the time. He was the voice of so many commercials all the time. He was in so many different movie roles popping up, and like not even that large, but just the volume, the amount that he was popping up in. He just felt like if you were to do interviews on top of that, people would just get so sick of like seeing him. And he honestly felt that way. That wasn't like a kind of like a fake humble, like, I just want them to get sick of me. But he actually did believe that. And so he kind of shied away from interviews.
You write very warmly about how he kept the penguin statues that people would send him, for example. Yes. If you could share a bit of that sense of his enjoyment or lack thereof of that character, please.
Yes. He loved, I think in the media, he liked to kind of, act kind of, I don't know, indifferent about it. But he really did love his role as the penguin. And he loved that he got to originate it on screen. He grabbed a lot of his references were from the comic books, and he tried to keep very true to them. But all the characterization minus like the costume, because he didn't really have say in that. If he did, it would have been totally different. But all the little features, the quack, the walk, the cigarette holder, everything, that was all, he created that, and he put much thought and effort into all these little quirks the penguin should have. And it was his first role that was geared towards children, which he loved. But it kind of changed how people saw him. So when he would go out, he'd have an occasional person come up and speak with him. But now he had all these children coming up to him, and he loved it. He loved being part of a children's show. But I wish he didn't seem so indifferent about it in the media. I don't know why he did that, but he did. He loved the role. Prior to filming, I just want to throw this in. He read a lot of like Charles Dickens books before, because he felt that the character was such like a Dickens quality to the penguin, so that he did his research.
I note obviously that Adam West spoke at Burgess's funeral. Could you tell us a bit about their relationship, please, in that mix?
Yes. So he wasn't that close to. He didn't really keep in touch and wasn't that close to the Batman cast, which people ask often. Was he friends with any of them? With Adam West, he was. He always felt Adam had an old soul, and they shared the same sense of humor, really. So he was pretty close with Adam, and I remember Adam popping in quite often during our summers, which wasn't. He always had kind of friends popping in. He lived alone, and so he always had people kind of, when they're passing through Malibu, checking up on him. And Adam was by far there the most, I would say. And they just bonded over everything from their love of wine to poetry to plays. They really were two very close friends.
My fiercely festive attentions turned to 1985 and Santa Claus, the movie. Possibly thinking back on it, other than maybe some episodes with my father and uncle of Rawhide or The Twilight Zone, then probably the first time that I would have seen Burgess Meredith on screen as the Ancient One, the ancient elf in the mix there.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about his placement in that movie, his preparation, and whether you watched it together growing up.
Yes. Okay. So he flew to the UK. It was filmed in the UK, as I'm sure you know. And the amount of time it took to put on the beard and the wig was longer than it took to film his small part. I recently watched it, and I hadn't watched it in 10 years before. And it's such like an honorable role. I don't remember that from when I watched it before. And it just like, it brought tears to my eyes. What a beautiful role it was. It was the only Christmas thing he'd really done, except for in 1956, he did a televised episode called The Christmas Tie with opposite Helen Hayes, which is actually on the YouTube channel, the Burgess Meredith Legacy YouTube channel. And that's kind of Christmas themed. But I'm glad that he did at least one Christmas themed movie. And he liked working with Dudley Moore again too, which was they had worked together in Foul Play. I don't think they shared any scenes together, but they knew each other from Broadway and also from Foul Play. And so he loved Dudley Moore. And they bonded over music and love of opera. So that was one thing that he loved about Santa Claus the movie, was working with Dudley Moore.
So we're looking at 7 decades of a film career in totality.
Yes.
Going back to the 30s there. You've mentioned in the mix, obviously, Rocky, and whilst we've ticked the Santa Claus the movie box for the Christmas episode, my Christmas my Christmas episode present here is to talk about Burgess in the role of Mickey with you.
Yes.
Can you give us some initial thoughts on his sort of preparations for the role and what it meant to him?
He auditioned for Mickey, which is basically how he got the role in the first place, meaning that the people they asked to audition wouldn't. The people they asked to audition were like, big named actors, and they wouldn't audition. They were offended that this person that no one who's never made a movie before, Sylvester Stallone, is asking them to audition. But Burgess didn't care, so he auditioned. He got the part. and then as soon as he knew that he got the role, he went out to Southern California and to all these kind of grimy gyms and interviewed all these trainers and got his inspiration for Mickey, down to even what hats they wore and what stopwatches they used, and just really, dug into the character and dug into what a trainer who's been training for 40 plus years talks like and dresses like and everything. And I think that preparation shows. He was really excited for this film because it was a low budget picture, which that's a whole nother topic, is how much he loved the new Hollywood as compared to the studio system, old right. Hollywood. He loved independent films because usually those were the most real. And so he was excited to work on Rocky for that factor alone, that it was indeed a lower budget film from someone no one had heard of before. And so he was ready and he was excited. And I think that enthusiasm, I think you can see the undercurrent of that enthusiasm on screen, I think, from Mickey. He loved that role.
I'm always surprised when I revisit those films how much rage he's able to bring to the situation when my lasting memory is of warmth. Right.
I totally agree. Yeah. He definitely, like in the case of Rocky 2 with the chapel scene, he was going through a very tough time. He was divorcing. He was separating from a wife at the time. His sister had just died. And so when there's something special about the chapel scene, and a lot of people mention that, and I think that's what it is. It was just that he was just going through such a difficult time, and it kind of, all the stress and strain of what was going on in his life kind of culminated in that scene when he's telling him that telling Rocky that he can't just give up. It's one of my favorites. I love Rocky. In case you can't tell from my social media accounts, I'm like, every other post is Rocky. I really love Rocky.
I think I spotted that you had a potential story that you hadn't told before about Rocky V. I was wondering whether it might be possible to have something of a UK scoop.
He was asked to go back and do Rocky V. He thought he was never going to. At this point in 1990 or 1989, when he was asked, he thought for sure, like prior to this, like, okay, he's probably done playing Mickey at this point. And there were things that he had wanted to change about Mickey, or that he wished he could have changed. Like he didn't like how in Rocky 3, I'm not going to give anything away, but the very abrupt and sad ending, he didn't actually really like that for his character. So when he got the call to do Rocky 5, he jumped at it. And was more than happy to accept it. And he knew in his mind this would be the final time for sure playing Mickey. So he was going to put as much raw emotion as he could into the scene, because he knew it was going to be, okay, it was my last scene as Mickey, so let me just put into this how much Rocky means to this character. And that's how he viewed Rocky 5, really, was just like kind of the last scene between Rocky and Mickey. And so I think when people see how much heart and rawness is in it, that was very purposefully done. And so when you watch the scene, all the close-up shots of Mickey, that was done in one take. He delivered that speech in one take. And my mother, who was there on set with him, so when they yelled cut, there was like 20 seconds of pure silence followed by applause. And he purposely chose not to rehearse it prior with Sly, just so he could just kind of get a real reaction. But mostly that final scene, you would get a feeling of love. And I think he accomplished that. I really do.
Annie May Pilon there, in glorious celebration of her grandfather's legacy. A full-length version of that interview will appear on the 12th Pier YouTube channel in the weeks to come. And my thanks, of course, to Annie May for taking the time to talk with us here this evening. My thanks also to Freddie Benedict and the Sam Every Big Band, to Alex Rafael, to Elisa and Jo Caleb, and to Ricardo Pez, whose glorious and sublime cello arrangements you hear accompanying my Noisecast ramblings yet again here. Most importantly, a huge thank you to all of you who have supported this show for the duration. You sustain us, and we are eternally grateful. You've provided me with a peaceful end to an otherwise preposterous 2020. Until the new year, then, for the last time, it is my great honor to say, good luck, stay legendary, and ever onward to you all.